Churchill was conscious of his ignorance and begged his mother to send him big, important books. She did. And he devoured like different books, like the History of England and really famous author Gibbon's books. He read The Martyrdom of Man, which turned him into a lifelong freethinker and critic of organized religion. He read everything of value he could get his hands on and forgot nothing he read. But there were always gaps, he felt, in his knowledge, which he eagerly filled when vital books were recommended to him. So I wrote a note here saying, be conscious of your ignorance and fill it. So Churchill was complete and utter devourer of books, which I hope listening to this podcast for you is a form of doing, and I hope it encourages you to buy and read the books that I'm extracting lessons from for you. But every single person I've studied so far has just rambled on about how important it is to educate yourself by reading books, whether it's Steve Jobs, whether it's Edward Bok, whether it's Bob Dylan, who I'm reading a book on right now. He was obsessed with reading. He devoured books like Churchill did. If you ever find yourself interested in something, just go buy a book and read about it, or listen to this podcast and then buy a book about it, because it's such an advantage in the digital era where most people just scroll on Instagram or TikTok and don't really learn anything from it. The ability to read and the power of reading is like almost forced meditation. Really famous investor, Lee Lu, I might be in Charlie Munger, said, as long as I'm reading, I feel like I'm not wasting my time. And I think that is so true. And when we fall into the busy trap of trying to fit as many things in that aren't necessarily essential, we sacrifice time to do other things like recharging and reading, which feeds our mind. If the best way to improve your health is to go on a run or go to the gym, I think the best way to improve your mind is to read books and read biographies about outliers and then apply those lessons to your life. And if you can't do that, or if you're on the run, or if you're commuting, or if you're cleaning, the best alternative is listening. And if you listen to this podcast, you'll be downloading information into your brain from these highly successful people, which will in turn hopefully benefit your life. Even if it's 5-10 years from now, the information will be in your mind and you'll unexpectedly be able to deliver or do something that completely changed your life just from reading like a £10 book. Charlie Munger says there's £1 billion worth of ideas in a $30 history book. So it's super important. In fact, it's so important, I'm going to quickly do a little sneak peek for a future episode and read an excerpt from Bob Dylan's book, because he emphasizes this so well. So be right back. He said, it was said that World War II spelled the end of the Age of Enlightenment, but I wouldn't have known it. I was still in it. Somehow I could still remember and feel the light of something about it. I'd read that stuff. Voltaire, Rousseau, John Locke, Montesquieu, Martin Luther, visionaries, revolutionaries. It was like I knew those guys, like they'd been living in my backyard. So that was an excerpt from Bob Dylan's autobiography, which is incredible and we'll be reading soon. But I think it just sums it up perfectly why we should study history's greatest people and outliers, because you become, Charlie Munger says, you become friends with the eminent dead. You have a little like Winston Churchill, little Teddy Roosevelt or Rousseau or David Yarrow or Robert Mapplethorpe or whatever. Like just pick anyone that you want to study and you find interesting in your head. So when you come up with challenges or experiences in your life that you didn't necessarily expect or weren't prepared for, there will be wisdom and lessons that you can use and apply to your life when you're in those situations that you would never have been able to use if you hadn't read the book or studied the person. And it really changes the way we think. Learning is changing your behavior, not memorization. So if we read these books about highly successful people and then change our behavior, that's going to lead to a higher chance of us succeeding in life. Because if it worked for them, it's clearly an effective blueprint for potentially our success if we apply it to the conditions in our life. Obviously, don't just blindly copy someone from 100 years ago. It might not work. But just, become friends with the eminent dead and study history's greatest people. And by listening to the podcast, you'll be doing that with me. So let's get right back into the book. Churchill reads everything of value he could get his hands on and forgets nothing he reads. But Churchill always felt there were gaps in his knowledge, right? And he was eager to fill these gaps with reading more books. I think that is a very good trait to have, right? To have that curiosity, to just follow what you're naturally interested in. And then the more you read, the more you realize what you don't know, and the more you realize you have to read more and read different books. And I think just repeating that over and over again is going to lead to a lot of compounding of knowledge, because knowledge does compound, like Warren Buffett says. So the more we read, the more it's going to compound, the more intelligent we're going to get, and the more we can succeed and triumph over the problems in life, because human nature repeats itself. Whatever's happened 200 years ago, 500 years ago, it's probably going to happen again. So if we know what to expect from studying these people, I think that's a win for us. Like Ansel Adams, Churchill was very hyperactive but more sedentary in his later existence. Yeah, that's quite a key thread. A lot of successful people actually tend to seem to have a bit of ADHD, or they just have some like quirks. They're a bit different. So yeah, I just found that really interesting how that kind of overlaps with Ansel Adams, who admitted he was very hyperactive and struggled in school as a child. So if you're hyperactive or don't enjoy school or formal education, don't worry, because if you follow the footsteps of these giants, I'm sure you'll end up being successful yourself. Again, like Steve Jobs, Churchill then and always was a mass of contradictions. And also like Arnold Schwarzenegger, humans are complex, right? And I think outliers are even more complex than normal people, or at least they openly have the courage to show their kind of faults and complexities. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it actually makes you stand out if you are like that. So don't be afraid to express your full self and just be truthful and be honest and be a bundle of contradictions, because yeah, people might not like it in the short term, but they'll remember you for it.